don't remember a thing. Where on earth am I? Beetle Adventure Racing. Huh. Weird. If I tell you to think about an N64 racing game, what comes to mind? Mario Kart 64? F-Zero X? Maybe a little Diddy Kong Racing? Or who knows, Wave Race 64? Now imagine one of these. The Volkswagen Beetle. Everyone knows what a Beetle is, and there are multiple reasons for that. I mean, one, just look at it. This is one of the most distinct looking cars, with its smaller, rounder, compact design. Now imagine the Beetle in an N64 racing game. Yeah, if you didn't know about this game, I wouldn't blame you. In the 90s, EA's Canada branch was working on a new Need for Speed game on the Nintendo 64. But unfortunately for Need for Speed fans, Need for Speed 64 was thrown out when EA signed a deal with Volkswagen. Volkswagen wanted a game based on their brand new Beetle model, and here's the thing with making a game based on a car. 9 times out of 10, it's going to end up pretty generic, and that's why the developers of Beetle Adventure Racing wanted to do something different. So the developers reworked Need for Speed 64 into Beetle Adventure Racing. Beetle Adventure Racing would go on to release to critical acclaim on the N64 in 1999. 1999 was a crazy year. If you were around, then you probably remember that NASA launched their Mars Polar Lander. Never mind, they lost contact with the Mars Polar Lander later that year in December. So, 1999 shall forever be known as the year Beetle Adventure Racing was released. As far as I'm concerned, nothing else happened in 1999. Anywho, this is a 1999 EA game from the Nintendo 64 that I didn't exist for, so you're probably wondering, why on earth do I care so much about it? Well, this was one of the first games I ever played. Before I was born, my parents bought an N64, and Beetle Adventure Racing was one of the few games they collected alongside the console. I have a lot of experience with this game. My older brother and I used to play it all the time. And due to that fact, I used to hate this game. There's one key reason for my hatred for this game, and it all circles back to my least favorite mechanic. When playing multiplayer, if one player gets too far ahead of the other, the game will disqualify you and you gotta sit there and watch as the other player just finishes the race. This drove me nuts! My brother was so much better at this game than I was. He would disqualify me every single race, and those stupid words stuck with me. Pick up the pace! You're falling behind! Those phrases still haunt me to this day. But I didn't let that kill the game for me. I've actually spent a lot of time with this game. Beetle Adventure Racing is an N64 racing game where you choose from one of many Volkswagen Beetles and race through a wide variety of racetracks with various shortcuts and alternate routes. This game is called Beetle Adventure Racing, and one would assume that adventure is just thrown in there because you race through plenty of different locations, but the real adventure comes through the game's strongest feature: the shortcuts and alternate routes. There are a ton of different paths you can take. And while some of the alternate routes may not be the fastest way to complete a race, it's still cool to see how much detail and care was packed into each map. To go with that, each map has you driving through a different location, whether it be through a dinosaur scene straight from Jurassic Park in Inferno Isle, or a frozen bridge with a hidden secret lodged underneath it in Mount Mayhem. But as I said before, don't stay on the usual path. Take a self-made detour. You can find yourself driving through a barn, crashing through a movie theater, or barreling down an abandoned mine. Forget property damage, you're driving a cute little Beetle. You can do no harm. The game has two different control options, automatic and manual. Typically in racing games, I'm a manual guy because I want the full capabilities of my car. But in this game, I gotta play automatic, man, because I'm too stupid for manual here. But the controls work. They're not perfect, but they work. There's definitely a charm to the arcade feel of the controls, but that's about the best I can say about them. Anywho, moving on, the game has 2 modes, Racing and Beetle Battle. Beetle Battle has up to 4 players competing to collect all the different beetles. To do that, you have to find them on a stage and blast your opponents with items. That's about all I have to say about that mode. It's fun, but not too memorable. Back to the tracks themselves. Typically, when I play a racing game, my go-to is Mario Kart. And I think the Mario Kart series has nailed the length of what a racing game course should be. 2 to 4 minutes max. But Beetle Adventure Racing tracks typically take around 7 minutes, if not more. Which at first felt like a little long, but after playing some more, I realized those 7 minutes are important. As I said before, taking alternate routes is the charm to this game, and it takes time to find those routes, so the 7 minutes feels fine when you look for secrets. If you don't, and you just take the normal track, it kinda will drag on. I can go on and on about the good things, like all the charming little details, like the great announcer voice or the great music. And those 2 things add to the greatness of this game, but there's one major flaw. You can't see! Now for a couple of the tracks this doesn't affect much, but some of the darker ones like Metro Madness and, oh boy, Wicked Woods, it feels like you're driving blind. Sure, there's some cool lighting effects, but I can't see a thing in some of these locations. I just end up grinding the wall and hoping it's taking me the right way. While it's definitely just an issue of the time, it makes it hard to replay some of those maps. You really gotta keep your eyes on the mini-map. And Beetle Adventure Racing is a seriously underrated Nintendo 64 game that honestly I would love to see a sequel to. The many different paths you can take makes each track feel big and open, and not to mention this game is filled to the brim with personality. Maybe fix up a little bit of lighting and make a ton of new tracks, and this would make an absolutely wonderful new racing game. Too bad the Beetle was discontinued in 2019.
Well, I never did find my way home. I'm still walking aimlessly in the fog, hoping to see something familiar. And I think I'm slowly going insane out here. But I have a copy of Beetle Adventure Racing on the N64, so nothing can go wrong, right?
Anybody? Anything? This isn't funny anymore.